Hi everyone, this is a lecture 13. I'm Todd Lusheen. This is for Safety 388. I'm getting really excited about preparing for and running these lectures because it's applied to things versus the foundational things. And so I've got a lot of stuff to cover here, but then I've got a lot of other videos that I found on YouTube that I want to share with you. So first, again, this is from a training institute. This is actually supposed to be part of one of those OSHA classes where you can get an OSHA card. They put it together, and so it's just meant to be a guide. Now, we're not going to apply it directly to the oil field. This is going to be more general industry stuff. And I'm not going to talk about the cranes and derricks. That's for next lecture. So first, let's talk about material handling and storage. And we're going to look at subpart N here in a little bit on the OSHA website when I go to the web browser. We're going to mainly focus on 1910-176, but it's very simple. It's very short. Then we're going to go into powered industrial trucks, and then I want to talk about some local resources and talk about Amazon because they're the ones that are really driving safety in warehousing and transportation, which is a somewhat of a high injury incidence industry, believe it or not. So this gives a really good summary of 176, even though we're probably going to look at it, and that is you need to have safe clearances and permanent aisleways or passageways marked. And earlier in the semester, we looked at a video in which a fork truck driver tried to squeeze through a blocked aisleway and nicked the shelving unit. And remember, the whole warehouse collapsed. Very expensive. Housekeeping is another issue. That's basically just keeping things clear and clean. And then if there's any chance of somebody falling into something or something falling onto them, there should be guardrails, covers, things like that. So here, I'm going to actually show you one of my consulting mock OSHA audits, and I'm going to cover some of the warehousing things and forklift things that I had found. And this is, again, this picture is a good example. When things are leaning or tilting or encroaching onto a cleared path, you got to move it. Space is always an issue, which is why people put things where they shouldn't. So let's fast forward to powered industrial trucks. This is a longer standard. And I provide a lot of videos that kind of speed through it. You know, they're anywhere from like 3 minutes to 6 minutes long. I'm just going to ignore that. I'm sorry. First of all, the safety requirement contains, is related to fire protection because that's also a concern in the warehouse, the design, both the equipment in the warehouse, maintenance of the trucks, and most importantly, training of it. Now, when we think of fork trucks, we think of a regular single cab with forks in the front that go up and down. They lean forward and they move out sometimes. But I also want you to keep in mind the order pickers, like if you've ever been in a Menards. Menards, what they have is the truck actually raises up and down, and the operator is in a harness for fall protection, and then they're supposed to be tied off to something that can withstand or handle 5,000 pounds. Now, I don't know if the roof is set up that way, and it's usually a retractable lanyard, and so they go up and then they walk out onto this like platform, and then they get the part, they set it on the platform, and then they come back down. There are different forms of order pickers which would probably fall under the same guise as forklift, and sometimes they even look like forklifts. If we had access to ANSI B56.1, we'd have everything the consensus standard has in powered industrial trucks. Now, I'm going to give you a reference in a little bit here to Wisconsin lift truck. They have great booklets that you can get that actually break down the ANSI standard. And if we were in the classroom, I'd actually have a member or two members from that organization come in to do this presentation and provide the virtual training. They have this, we can put on an ocular mask and then go through forklift training virtually. So they've got that too. Talk about the markings as well. I'm not going to get too heavily into that, but the markings indicate what the fork truck is rated for. There should be no modifications based on, so you can't cut into or drill into any of the structure. You'll see some of the stuff in the videos as well. There's two types of energy sources. There's the electrical, so there's battery energy, and then there's also liquid petroleum. Sometimes also the big ones are diesel. The amount of energy needed, the amount of power needed kind of dictates which power source you use. The gas powered fork trucks can generate more energy when needed. but they give off fumes. So LP gives off carbon monoxide, diesel gives off NOx gases and carbon dioxide. Battery doesn't give off those gases, but it does, again, it generates power, but not the at needed power that the gas powered trucks can give. Talks about, so you need an overhead guard in case things were to fall and it needs to protect you. You need to be buckled in, because if you're driving around and if it was to tip and you'd be thrown, then you'd be crushed. They want you to be buckled in. Got to make sure that you can properly sit. There should be some sort of cushioning, so when you're bouncing around, that vibration isn't absorbed by the body. And you got to be able to see where you drive. So if you pick up a lift and your field of vision is limited, then you got to drive backwards. And sometimes fork trucks actually are standing, so it's much easier to kind of turn and look. But you have to be able to compensate for looking backwards and being able to steer, and that takes skill, which is why the training is supposed to do that. Another thing with the LP, or the liquid petroleum, is it's a compressed gas. So when you're going to be changing out a tank, you should be wearing gloves or arm guards, because a compressed gas, when released, is very, very cold, and you can get frostbite. Or frost burn, I think is the better term. And if this stuff gets released in the environment, if there's a spark or an arc, it could ignite it, and that would explode. Charging stations, they should be off to the side. You should be trained to be aware that if you're going to be adding distilled water to the battery, which is a maintenance task, that's exposure to battery acid. So you need to have a face shield, you need to have an apron, you need to have gloves, and there needs to be an eye wash station nearby for flushing out the eyes should something splash up. And all that PPE should be readily available and visible at a charging station. Also be aware that there should be adequate ventilation, it says on the bottom, because when batteries are being charged, they tend to give off hydrogen. And if you have a carbon monoxide detector in the area, those sensors actually falsely identify hydrogen as carbon monoxide. So you may have something going off, it's not carbon monoxide, it's hydrogen, which is why you need to ventilate, because hydrogen can also burn. If you're going to be removing batteries, you should be using a hoist. These things are heavy, I think 100 pounds. And it talks a little bit about charging. You got to be careful. Smoking is prohibited because of the hydrogen, and you should control any sort of sparking and arcing. You need to have a minimum lighting for the use of forklifts in and around them. And there is, for carbon monoxide, you're supposed to test the tailpipe at both idle and 3/4 throttle, and it needs to be below 10,000 ppm, which is why if you're going to use an LP powered fork truck, you should really have a higher ceiling and a bigger area, because if it's a lower ceiling and a compressed area, those gases can actually build up pretty quickly, and so you should have carbon monoxide detectors. If you do operate LP fork trucks, you should be testing worker exposure to carbon monoxide throughout the year, throughout their shift. You can use passive dosimetry for that testing. It's easier, it's less expensive versus the electronic logging devices. And you should probably do it when things are all closed up, like wintertime was a good time to test for that. Because when everything's open, it's a little bit better. If fork trucks are going to be used, if any devices, even a pallet jack is going to be used to on a loading dock to enter a trailer, those wheels need to be chalked or blocked, or you need to actually have a locking device or a hook at your at the gate. Gate locks. Gate locks. Operator training is quite extensive. There both is classroom training and then also the operation. And each site is required to perform that training and keep records on it. And then if things change or if there's accidents, the worker needs to be retrained. Otherwise, at least every 3 years, they need to go through retraining, and that has to be documented. You can have contracting companies come in and do that for you, the site specific for you. And I'm gonna give you a reference to that if you're in Wisconsin and it's something you need. So other things about, so it has to be site specific to the type of trucks you're using, to the type of environment in which you're using them, whether it's battery powered or LP powered or diesel. Diesel tend to be much larger. They tend to be out actually in an outdoor area. You have to control for pedestrian traffic. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the technologies now, because there are also robot fork trucks. Now, if you go into any sort of plant that has they use it forklifts, they've got the blue lights. The blue lights are meant to let people who are walking know that there's a fork truck coming. They have the half sphere mirrors kind of at different intersections. So as someone's pulling up, they can look and see in different directions. They also have flashing lights when there's a lot of traffic. They'll have designated pathways. So pedestrians stay in the pathway. Fork trucks stay away from the pathway. Sometimes in certain high traffic areas, they'll have actual barriers, collision barriers. But you see a lot of the blue lights now. A lot of the blue lights, these things are equipped with backup alarms. Sometimes fork truck drivers are trained to honk whenever they're approaching an intersection or a corner. So there's a lot of things that can be done to make pedestrians aware, or for other fork trucks aware of each other. And they should always have vision. If you've got a load that's up, you should be backing up. You shouldn't be. I know some would think they can lean out. That's a bad idea, because now they're not protected by the cage, and they could actually, their head can strike, or it can actually be pinched or sheared off. This talks about the certification has to contain. Again, if OSHA shows up, they should be reviewing those training records. Let's see, other truck operations. I think I've covered a bunch of these already. Yep. So when a truck is left unattended, first of all, it should be shut off, but then also you should always lower the forks. And when a fork is raised, you should never go underneath it. Always make sure you're picking up a secured load, because if it's unsecured or off balance and you pick it up, that's more likely for it to fall over. It may hit somebody. It may get under the truck or cause the truck to tumble. But then also it's damaged equipment. So everything should be secured. And the brake should always be set, especially on an incline, so it doesn't roll away. Let's see, more safe. Yeah, I think it's pretty much overhead guard is supposed to protect, so you should never manipulate it in any way, shape, or form. Make sure, it should be 3 truck lengths away minimum, but I think even in the videos you see that they don't always follow that. It's just meant so that if one has to do an immediate, like a quick stop, that you don't ram into it. There are more technologies now that are sensors, so that they keep vehicles separate. They also now you could put governors on fork trucks, so they can't go as fast as potential, especially if you have some NASCAR type fork truck drivers. They can also individually measure speed, stopping, swerving, just like they do in over-the-road trucks now, and that can be fed to the cloud system, so that a plant manager knows when you have a fork truck operator who's either going too fast or they're driving too recklessly. And actually, you can have the system shut down if it exceeds any tolerances set within the computer. More stuff that I already talked about. They're not designed to go anything over 10% grade. We're going to get into the gantry cranes and stuff actually in the next lecture. So that's everything I wanted to cover from this particular presentation. What I'd like to do is quickly go to our Canvas site. And so we just went through this PowerPoint. I'm going to go over my consulting PowerPoint here next. I also want you to check out the OSHA Powered Industrial Truck e-tool. It's good. It actually has great information. Should you ever be in charge of or asked to review a fork truck or warehouse safety program. They also have a topics page, what's more general. And then we've got the link to Wisconsin Lift Truck. I recommend you go check them out. I actually have the brochure that they had shared. As you can see, they do the training for you. They're located in Wisconsin and Illinois. They can also maintain your fork trucks. And they also have the virtual training. Virtual reality simulators do not replace the performance that is required for training, but the research shows that they, when people go from classroom to virtual simulation to the work environment, the performance testing, they tend to do better on the testing because they've already kind of done that transition. So definitely, if you need help, this company's there. And again, they are the ones who come in and typically do this training for me. I do want you to watch all these videos. I handpicked them. So first, there is a report, inside report for Amazon warehouse. I believe it's down in Tampa in Florida, because Amazon is growing so fast. And they've really upped the game when it comes to the use of technology, safety technology, within warehousing. And it seems like they're putting up a new warehouse every week. They were actually, I'm in the process of developing a relationship with Amazon, with their safety department. So maybe we can create some sort of hiring, an internship pathway from our students to them. And so I think we may actually have to increase our curriculum on warehousing safety, technology, material handling, forklift, robotics, all that kind of stuff, because they're really on the cutting edge here, and their logistics system is state of the art. It's beyond anything we can really comprehend. So this video explains that. I have this really short video that talks about what their safety people do. I really think, I mean, if you want to look ahead, I don't see Amazon slowing down. You hear more and more of different types of stores actually going bankrupt or closing down, because people want to just go on the website, find what they need, order, and have it delivered to their house. Now that kind of expands the need for safety professionals for warehousing and transportation, which, if you look at the Bureau of Labor statistics, there are a lot of accidents there. That's going to keep going up. There's fatalities there too, with transportation, the number one cause of workplace fatalities. So it's a very interesting field. I think it's becoming even more interesting as the technology is increasing. Then I have a compilation of forklift and warehousing accidents. I want you to watch that. There's a training video. That one's sort of iffy, but then the warehouse safety tips. Definitely check that out. I think you'd like that. And that talks about technologies and robots and things like that. So those are the other videos. I guess the last thing that I want to go over, other than here's the e-tool. Here are the standards we're looking at here. We'll be talking about slings and cranes, both from a general industry and a construction perspective in the next lecture. And then I just searched EHS jobs with Amazon. 103 job openings came up. Now, they're all over the world, of course. But, 7 hours ago, a day ago, 4 days ago, 5 days ago, these are in California. This one's in Texas, California, Massachusetts. And I know that I've seen jobs posted for safety professionals in Beloit for Amazon and in Madison for Amazon. And so, again, it's just interesting how they're doing a lot of the hiring right now, and they seem to be doing very well in this slowed down economy. All right, so let's go to my consulting. So this was done, 3 years ago. I feel like I was just there. And I'm just going to focus on the warehouse stuff, because they have a lot of warehouses. Interestingly enough, I actually have an intern right now working with Swiss Colonies, which is out of Monroe, but they've got a distribution center up in Sun Prairie, and they're using a lot of the logistics technologies, and it's warehousing and it's delivering, because they've got a mail catalog too. So it just kind of goes over the different things I did, how I did it. So they had electrical issues. That's something I always look for. I always look for if you could stick, is there a hole that you could stick your finger in and contact live electrical. You see here this orange thing, that is a forklift charging station that's blocking access to a panel. Shouldn't do that. Other electrical issues, the use of multi-strip, the use of extension cords, a lot of violations there. They actually need to bring an electrician to fix this stuff up. Again, more exposed electrical. These are more office settings. More electrical issues both in the warehouse and in the office. Okay, the material handling and warehouse storage. So there was evidence that fork trucks had actually contacted, dented, damaged components of the racking system. And if you damage the racking system, it's more likely to fail, and things will all come tumbling down. And so you can put guards here, but sometimes you see those guards, even though they've got huge bolts holding to the ground, secure them to the ground, they're sheared off, because that's all it takes. if fork truck drivers are accidentally hitting the racks, you got to see, is there enough room? What needs to be done to ensure that there's never any contact. And then there's also proper material handling and storage. And as you can see in the bottom here, we've got pallets of materials that are actually tipping, and that's a violation of the material handling standard. So damaged racks, I called general duty, but then I set it an ANSI standard: inadequate clearance in lanes, inadequate palletization integrity, so there's a tipping or collapse hazard. And so they have to do better. They really need to do better, because that can cause injuries and also damage to products. They were using an anchor point. You can see here that has to be rated at 5,000 pounds. They had to verify that, and if it's not, can't use it as an anchor point. That's a lanyard. Let's see, what else did I cite? So then the charging station, these were electric powered. This charging station here, they're combustible materials. You can't have that. Because remember, charging gives off hydrogen, so it needs to be well ventilated, no combustible materials, no sparking or arcing, and they need to have the PPE. And I've got a board here that actually you could purchase through Granger, I think. This was a spray booth. They made it themselves, completely illegal. So they're going to have organic vapors, flammable vapors just floating around. No HAZCOM. Tool safety was an issue. Eye wash stations were issues. I mean, you can have these wall mounted as long as they're inspected regularly. You don't want there to be some sort of bacterium growth or algae growth in the water. As you can see, here's, again, a warehouse, other things like that. Overhead storage is another issue. It has to be rated, so there should be a placard that indicates what the load capacity is. It needs to make sure it doesn't become a falling hazard. And then we're starting to get into the walking, working surfaces issues, which we're going to talk about in Lecture 15. Balers are always in warehouses for materials. You need special training for that because you can crush somebody. And I believe that's everything. So please, please, please check out these videos that I selected. You can even look up more information about Amazon. So if you were interested in safety and not sure what area to specialize, you'd be rest assured that there's plenty of opportunities through like an Amazon. So you'd need to, maybe having a background in the logistics of warehouses and warehouse safety, proper use and function of a forklift or powered industrial truck, safety training program, and then the technologies that are all available out there. And I know that Amazon has given generously to the ASSP Foundation, and so you can get, I think, $15,000 scholarships from them, and it'd probably be easier to get should you reach out to them. And again, we are trying to create some sort of working relationship with them and UW-Whitewater. So reach out to me if you have any questions. If you haven't already, please contact me by email so we could set up our one-on-one discussion this week. Thank you.